Facebook Live. But as far as it comes down to the schedules for both Michigan and Michigan State, I am really shocked that midweek when they finally did release this schedule, that they're planning on starting practice Friday and planning on having games going off September 5th. That seems very unlikely to me. But look, you know what? When they put the schedule out, there you go. When they put the schedule out and it said that it came with a warning, like, here's the schedule, but it might not happen. I thought that was pretty ominous to begin with. But to not have the Big Ten East games there first, it really surprised me. I know that they put a lot more thought into it than I did, but it seems it's confusing to me why they would have crossover games right out of the gate, unless they're already just thinking, hey, that's for show, and we plan on moving those out anyway. So that was suspicious to me that they would go with three of their teams having their season paused right now. It's kind of like, hey, we're going to start this thing on time, and we're just going to see what happens. What I thought that they would do, and what seemed like a smart move, and I know we always say wait 2 weeks. I know a lot of people have been saying that for 4 months. It's almost become a punchline. Well, let's wait 2 weeks. But if they did wait 2 weeks, they could get further information on baseball, and they could also actually see what was going to happen in the NFL, a real contact sport that's actually playing the same sport, except at the pro level, just to get a read on how it was going. I'm really surprised that they're getting ready to go tomorrow. I hope it works. I'm looking forward to September 5th. All of those things. It's just, I have a hard time sifting through the whole thing when I don't think that they're really going to play the games. But if they do end up playing them, for Michigan, I ended up picking them to go 8-2, and I got the Spartans sitting there at 4-6.
So you thought they should have waited to release the schedule and waited longer for them to begin their practices?
I thought that they should have looked to start the season. If I'm looking at my calendar here, I would have had it start in 2 weeks, the 21st, and that would have put the football season starting on September 19th. That would have given them a delay. That would have given them more information, and then they could have pushed everything back. Starting it right now makes me feel like there's a way less of a chance that this thing's actually going to go off. And I know they've left a bunch of different holes and 41 different opportunities to move things around, but I think they needed that time right out of the gate. I didn't take it. But, look, Michigan's president, Mark Schlissel, this is what he is. I mean, he knows about viruses. That's what he has studied. That's his background. That's everything. And if the Michigan president gives us the okay and he says, you know what, he gives the blessing that Michigan could be out on the practice fields, and who am I? I mean, I'm a sports talk, out of work sports talk guy. So,
hey, you were working hard this week.
I was, and the last 3 weeks I've been working hard. But if Mark Schlissel is given his blessing, and if the Indiana president, where his freshman football player was hospitalized last week, his mother was writing a letter on Facebook. If he's like, you know what, hey, this is just an exception, not the rule. He feels good about that. Well, let's hit the field and go.
I don't have a problem with them trying to start in the first weekend of September. I don't see what the point of pushing the schedule back would be. I know that you said that perhaps they could wait to see what the NFL is doing. We know what the NFL plans to do. They plan to have players get tested every single day. They plan to have no preseason games. They plan to have a 2-week ramp-up period before they start practicing in pads, and then they're going to practice in pads, and then boom, all of a sudden, second weekend of September, they're going to start playing games. I don't know how much they could learn from that. They have already seen what's going on in baseball and in basketball and hockey, which are irrelevant because they have bubbles. I figure they might as well try and start. And one thing you have to consider is, while they have an extra 2 weeks to try to see what's going on and see if the numbers go down, I think the numbers are starting to very slowly trickle down, at least nationally, in terms of the amount of cases. But the deaths are going up. There really hasn't been anything done to stop that. There have been a couple of more mask orders put into place. We talked on Tuesday about how the Mississippi governor instituted a mask order for his state because he wants to have college football, but that's a very small state and it's only one state, and there isn't a lockdown, and we know that a lockdown or a shelter in place or whatever you want to call it, that's the most effective way to crush the virus. So I don't think that anything is going to tangibly change between now and the first week of September. And if they were to delay the season by 2 weeks, the big danger, and certainly the big danger that baseball is concerned about, is that that second wave hits. That, I think, is a bigger problem than perhaps the extension of the first wave or the flare-ups or whatever you want to call it that we've been seeing for the last month or so that will probably continue for the next month or so. When these experts say that they're concerned about a second wave hitting in October or November, that would crush the college football season, at least the end of it.
Well, that's why I'm surprised they didn't put those Big Ten East games first. Look, I think you got a point there about let's just get it going. I know this, like, just as you were talking there, it's nothing against you. I think you've done your work and the things that you were saying. But just like when I was watching the news tonight, after a while, it's just kind of like, COVID. And America needs, like, America, we like hockey and basketball, and we like golf, and we enjoy baseball, especially older folks. But this is a football country, and everybody wants football, and everybody needs football, and getting football back out there just makes people feel good, hearing about football. There are probably people like, yeah, so stop talking about it. They should wait 2 weeks. We're ready for it. Let's have some good news. And, there's part of it. America's looking for something to cling on to. Football fans are, for sure. You start feeling like, in the past, my month of July was spent a lot. I know I said this to you before because you don't jump into fantasy football like me, but man, I'm looking at it, charting things and mock draft and stuff. And I haven't spent 5 minutes on football like that. Where people are waiting for it, America wants it. So yeah, let's cross our fingers and let's kick it up and hope they can get through the first weekend.
Yeah, but when I look at the Michigan and Michigan State schedule, the biggest issue I had with Michigan, and we talked about this before, was that when you're going to add the crossover game, I wanted it to be a competitive balance game, and things set up nicely for the number one team in the East last year to play the number one team in the West, Wisconsin versus Ohio State. Number two, Minnesota versus Penn State. They weren't scheduled. You could have scheduled those. The bottom feeders, Northwestern or Rutgers, you could have scheduled those. They didn't do that at all. I don't know what their thought process was for adding the crossover games. Michigan, they got a little bit, probably a big benefit here because their crossover edition was the worst team in the West last year, Wisconsin. They should have added Iowa. So I think that's a big benefit for their schedule. I think that Michigan State got screwed because they have to play Michigan at Michigan for the second year in a row. Without crowds, that's not going to be a big deal. Their crossover game, I thought, did match them in terms of competitive balance because they get to play Nebraska. In terms of the Michigan-Ohio State game, I get moving that up because of the fear of the second wave. It just feels weird to me to have that on October 24th as opposed to like November 24th or whenever it would be the first Saturday after the fourth Thursday in November. Your prediction was what, 8-2 for Michigan?
Yeah.
And for Michigan State, you had what, 4 wins for them?
Yeah, 4 wins. I got Michigan losing to Penn State and then Ohio State. And when the first edition of the schedule came out, I had Michigan, going to Minnesota and losing that game. They had Penn State at home, and that was before, we had a pandemic, and the team has been home. That's been a big deal in the series. But now I don't think that it's going to be much of a factor with no fans in the stands. And so when you look at, Penn State, what they have returning on their offensive line, even though they lost Parsons, which is a huge piece of their defense, having experience, and especially on an offensive line, returning quarterback as well, that's pretty important when you start thinking about it. And that's why I ended up, going with the loss to Penn State. But the one thing is,
and who do you have them losing? Who's the other loss to? Is that going to be Maryland? Is that going to be Indiana?
No, it's Ohio State, like it is every year. I'm not going to be able to pick against. I'm not, picking Michigan to beat Ohio State. I picked at this time last year. I picked Michigan to beat Ohio State. They had a returning quarterback. They had a coaching change. The game was at home. I felt pretty good about it. And then I watched the first 2 games, and I changed my prediction. Then the year before, I said, "No way, I'm ever picking Michigan again." Kind of like I am now. Yeah. Then I watched the whole season, and Ohio State looked terrible. Purdue got, scoring 50 points
And Michigan
on
had
them.
that big checklist. They had that big checklist going. Hey, look at this. The revenge tour checklist.
Yeah, the revenge tour was going, man. Then they went out there and almost actually got 100 put on him, like Ryan Day said he's going to do this year. So, I don't know. My head hurts when I look at the whole thing. The one, Purdue and Minnesota at the beginning, like I said, that doesn't make any sense to me. It should have been all of the Big Ten East games.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look, I get moving Ohio State up, but then they sandwiched Wisconsin in there, which is not in the Big Ten East, and then they have Maryland on there. I don't know, man. I know they were saying they called this Jenga. I call it kind of dartboard because I think that's what they were doing on Monday and Tuesday. It's like, who's Michigan playing?
Yeah.
Purdue, put it on the board. Let's go.
Yeah,
That's the way it looks to me.
I've got, unfortunately, the Deep South Buckeyes running the table going 10-0. They're too good. Justin Fields, a lot of us thought that he might opt out. He hasn't, so that's a problem. Penn State, I didn't pick a specific win total for the other teams. I have them in a range. I've got Penn State with 8 or 9 wins. I think that their schedule actually looks pretty favorable for them. And then in third place, it's going to be either Michigan or Indiana. I've got them each with 5 to 7 wins. I've got Maryland with 3 to 5 wins, Michigan State with 1 to 3 wins, and Rutgers with 1 or 2 wins. When I look at the Michigan schedule, it certainly helps Michigan that they're in their second game of the year. Minnesota's best player, Rashad Bateman, will not be playing, and they're also dealing with a new offensive coordinator who went to Penn State, so that could be an issue for them. But there's a chance that Michigan, especially with that game being on the road, could start off the season 1-2 with Purdue at Minnesota and then home in Michigan. That's going to be a big problem for them. So their goal has to be to get to at least 2-1.
Well, Chap, I know that you don't like Michigan. We'll get to that further in later on in story time in the show. But if you look at it, Rondell Moore, Michigan's first game, their wide receiver, he's opted out.
They'll
We're
win
already
that
talking
game.
about Bateman. He's opted out. Michael Parsons, Michigan's third game, Penn State, he's opted out.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's kind of a bye against Rutgers.
Yeah.
Michigan State, that's a bye
That's a
this
win.
year, for sure. So already heading into that bye, that's looking
then look at
like a good possibility for 6-0.
Look, well, no, it's
guess
only
that'd be
5
5-0.
games. No,
5-0.
Okay. Micah Parsons is not the whole team. He's the best player, but they've still got some very quality linebackers. But let's say they go 4-1. They lose to Penn State, and they go 4-1, winning the other 4 games. After that, they go at Indiana. Indiana, I believe, has the second best quarterback in the conference, certainly in the Big Ten East, maybe the conference, and they're I think an upcoming team. With that game being in Indiana, I think that there's a shot Michigan loses that one, a good shot. Then at the Deep South Buckeyes, home against Wisconsin, those are 2 losses, particularly when you got Michigan that doesn't have a quarterback assigned to them yet. I think that there's definitely a chance that Michigan could lose up to 5 games. I think that 5 to 7 wins is where I have them. Michigan State, on the other hand, you're talking about, yes, they're going to beat Rutgers. Yes, they've got a good shot to beat Northwestern at home. But Minnesota, Maryland, Penn State, Michigan, Deep South Buckeyes, Iowa, Indiana. I mean, their third win could be against Nebraska. They're dealing with a new system, a new terrible quarterback. It's going to be ugly.
Yeah, well, nothing's uglier than what you had to say for the last minute. Let's get to that. You got any tweets or anything you want to put out about Day saying he's going to slap 100 points on the Wolverines this year?
Yeah, there is a story that I want to get to that you're mentioning, and that is about Harbaugh versus Ryan Day. I put the story up right there from ESPN.com, and I'll read some of it for you for those listening via the podcast. Quote, during a conference call among Big Ten coaches on Monday, Michigan's Jim Harbaugh reportedly interrupted Ohio State's Ryan Day and accused the Buckeyes of breaking rules regarding breaking rules regarding on-field instruction. Harbaugh asked Day about a photo that purportedly showed Buckeyes assistant Al Washington working with Ohio State's linebackers. NCAA rules don't permit on-field instruction until Friday. Day told Harbaugh, how about I worry about my team and you worry about yours? And then, this webpage is freezing up. But later on in the article, it mentions that Ryan Day spoke to his players later on that day about that discussion and said that he hopes that there's a mercy rule in college football this year because if not, they're going to hang 100 points on Michigan. What did you think about that exchange and about Ryan Day's comments to his players that leaked out?
Well, I love it. I hope it's all true. I don't think it is. I mean, just looking through that.
You hope they hang 100 on your Wolverines?
No, I hope the story's true that they went back and forth, because you know what?
Okay.
It can't get any worse for Michigan right here. So, yeah, let's try to get the coach fired up. Let's have the other coach talking about hanging 100. Let's get something going where you can get ticked off enough maybe to do something. But everything's so on brand here. I could see Harbaugh interrupting at the meeting. Like, who's running the Big Ten teleconference? Is it Kevin Warren, the Big Ten commissioner? Did he say anything? Like, Al Washington, who was at Michigan, left and now is doing a great job, especially in recruiting. And Ohio State's got like the greatest recruiting class ever. So you're going right at, one of your former coaches here. And then for Ohio State, I mean, there's one thing about, slide money for tattoos and, emails and cash and whatever else. It's like, yeah, who cares about any of that? But, hey, let's break protocol, health and safety protocol, because we're the Buckeyes. We want to get some extra practice in. All the Buckeye fans don't care. It's like, oh, to hell with that. Let's get out there. Let's do anything we can. We don't care if we catch anything. We just know we're going to kick Michigan's ass. We're going to hang 100 on you. So it's all on brand. And I like it. One thing I like that Harbaugh should be pissed off every day at Ohio State. I hope every time he goes up, I don't care what he's doing, after any game or anything else, I want him to take another shot at Day and talk about, well, you know what? Our guys, we're trying to keep them safe. We know down at Ohio State they aren't. Let's do it every time. Let's try something else, because everything the last couple of years here, 52 points, 62 points, none of that's working. Fire off.
Hey, I'm with you 100%. Look, this is on brand when you think.
Jeez, maybe I won't do so much yelling. Oh, yeah. So that's me. ESPN came out, and they ranked 2 Lions with the best chance to make the Hall of Fame. It's the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Matt Stafford, and a guy who hasn't even set foot on an NFL field for a real game, speaking of the Buckeyes, Jeff Okudah. What did you make of these 2 selections, and ESPN saying these are the 2 guys that have the best chance to make the Hall of Fame?
Well, here's what ESPN's Bill Barnwell said about the Detroit Lions pair. And by the way, as you can see on the screen, it's a very short paragraph. And I'll scroll up just quickly so you can compare that to other teams. You got
He's been keeping a regular routine, reaching out to friends and family, and exercising. Guys, leave it to the former First Lady to encapsulate.
So it's when you hear Michelle Obama say what she said, to come out on her podcast, and I believe her podcast just started, so on one of her first episodes saying something like that, I think it's great to be open about it. She's an influential figure. She's rich. She's the former First Lady, so she's showing that you're not too rich, you're not too famous to have to go through depression. I've never had depression, but I know that people who are depressed have talked about hearing others talk about their issues helps them. Like when Kevin Love came out a couple of years ago saying that he had depression, the star for the Cavaliers, a lot of people that have dealt with depression felt that was very helpful. I've seen people deal with depression, and this might seem kind of fake, or people saying that I don't know what I'm talking about. But I know that just several years ago, I just made a decision that I would not slip into depression. That doesn't mean that I'm always happy, because nobody's happy all the time. But I would just make a conscious effort, no matter how difficult the situations have been, to not slip into depression, because obviously people that are depressed end up, not all the time, not even a large minority of the time, but sometimes they end up committing suicide, and I never wanted to get to that point. But certainly there are reasons for me to be depressed. You know, some of the reasons that a lot of us have to be depressed in 2020, with the coronavirus, with people dying, with perhaps people dying, with social unrest, with job loss, or an indefinite job furlough, with social distancing. One of the things that she mentioned in her podcast was social distancing, because you're just not allowed to see people right now. I haven't been depressed, but I could understand somebody being depressed with all those things piling up on top of you, one after another, and it seems like whenever there's new news, it's bad news. I mean, look what happened in Beirut earlier this week with what almost looked like a nuclear bomb. So it's I think it's great what she's doing, and I hope that she and everybody else get over it, but it's been a tough year so far.
Well, I mean, that's the understatement of the day there, and I'm glad you brought it up. Like, I don't know what the degrees are of depression, whether you got it or not. She called it a low grade. Is there one below that? I can completely understand it from almost everybody out there. It's like, if you're not depressed, it's like what's wrong with you? I would say, when there's just this endless loop of constant, like, you watch the news and it's always the same thing. And that, and then you've got people on, whether it's politics or whether they just like to fight over, well, you should wear a mask, you shouldn't, what about the school? They should put them in the school. And everybody's got all these things, and it's just back and forth. And it just makes your head hurt. Mm-hmm. And, there's so many sad things. Like, to me, I would say you could put me in a low grade part there. My mom, I went to get her in Florida last month, and she's, 77 years old. But, here's a lady who volunteered at the airport on Monday. She goes to, a senior center and, dances with, her friends. On Tuesday, she's going to, some kind of, it's not Weight Watchers, but something like that. Mentioned she, went to the airport. She's, going to see relatives over the weekend, and she's going to church 4 or 5. She's very active.
Yeah.
4 or 5 times a week. She can't do any of that. So she's gone from, being active the 4 or 5 times a week. Now she just has to stay home. And when you hear people say, we just need to get back, which I get all of that. But then they're just like, when it comes down to the elderly or people with underlying conditions, they're just like, stay home, protect yourself. I mean, that's depressing. And you can't go when you're talking about, keeping a physical distance or something else. My friends over the last couple months, they've gotten together a few times. There's been some poker parties. There's been, some outdoor barbecues or something, but we have somebody in our house here that has a condition that we have to protect, our entire house. So I'm not going out and risking anything. So I'm in that category. So it does suck. Yeah, I mean, if it sucks out there, we're hoping. That's why we're sitting around talking about sports and hoping it gets going. And that,
I mean, this is our 26th show, and we haven't seen each other in months.
I know. Well, and that's the thing, like, even when I'm talking about football and it seems like, oh, doom and gloom, I'll be surprised even if they get it going tomorrow. I'm sure there's people that are watching that and are like, no, let's just click off. This isn't very positive. I get that, but you got to be honest. And, the sports has been nice here. I got a little taste of baseball for 10 games. I was all in, and, I'm depressed about that. I mean, I know that's that's not depression, and that's, kind of a joke, but I was enjoying it. It was was fun while it lasted. It only lasted 10 games.
Well, I'm still enjoying the other baseball games. I watch baseball every day, whether the Tigers are playing or not. But I can tell you,
you're watching Korean baseball.
That's right, Korean baseball. So I've been watching baseball for months, I guess you could say. But I can tell you one thing that has helped me is that I drive for Uber. A lot of you guys know that, and of course I've got another story coming up in the 5th chapter. But my last radio show was on March 15th. So that's 4.5 months ago. And if I didn't have a source of income and I was sitting around making unemployment, then I probably would be. Matter of fact, I know I'd be closer to depression. I still don't think I would be, but who knows? I know I'd be closer to depression because I'd be sitting around in my apartment for 4.5 months with nothing to do, with no one to see. It would suck. But when I Uber, and I Uber just about every day, I might take like 2 days off per month. I had to take off 2 days ago because I had a flat tire. But I mean, when I Uber, every 20 to 40 minutes, there's a new person in my car to talk to. And I could talk to, up to 20 people per day. And it's harder to be lonely when people are constantly getting in and out of your car and talking to you. I mean, I don't have, an immediate family that lives with me like you do. You got a wife and kids. I don't have that. I live absolutely by myself. So having those people to talk to helps. I know that I haven't given a hug to anybody in over 5 months, and the last time I did, it was to my sister, and she cringed because she thought maybe I'd be giving her the coronavirus. So,
you did report in Storytime a couple of weeks ago. There was that hooker that gave you her number, but you refused. That wasn't a hooker. I'm sorry, a dancer.
It was a stripper. Yeah.
Stripper. Sorry.
Yeah. So well, she just wanted to ensure that she could get rides. Well, yeah, I'm sure that she would have been interested in a whole lot less social distancing than even that. But yeah.
Well, that could get us into some story time in our major wager, huh?
Yeah. Let's get to the major wager. Dennis, why don't you go first?
Yeah, well, you know what? I've been just spoon feeding some of these picks. I hit on my first baseball game, which was a Tiger one, and then I split it up, and I played some over and unders, and I split those. So I was at just 20 units, with the juice, but you talked me into going big on the Raptors because I said I liked them, and they won. So I'm up 120 right now. I'm looking to tomorrow night. I'm going to keep riding that Raptors train. They're taking on the Celtics. I'm all about the Raptors right now. Am I going to go all 120? No. But I am going to put 50.
That's a major wager. That's a major wager. I'm going to go with tonight's Rockets-Lakers game. I believe that started at 9:10. I don't know what the update is on that, but I tweeted it out earlier just in case you think I'm lying, and I know the Raptors are up by 30 or whatever. But I have the Rockets minus 3.5 against the Lakers. There's a lack of star power in tonight's game. No LeBron James, no Russell Westbrook. But I like the Rockets for a few reasons to win and cover. One, the Lakers have already locked up the number 1 seed. They have nothing to play for, while the Rockets are in a sandwich. They're the number 6 seed. They're 2.5 games ahead of Dallas for the 7 seed. They're tied with Oklahoma City for the 5 seed, a half game back of Utah for the 4 seed. Now, in terms of home court advantage, there really isn't any, but you still want the best seed possible. So you can, if you get the 4 or the 5 seed, certainly, well, if you get, I guess the 6 seed would be the best way to avoid the Lakers or Clippers in the second round, but you still want the best seed possible. Second reason, the Lakers look like crap right now. They've lost 2 out of their last 3, both of those losses by at least 15 points. They looked lazy in last night's game. The Rockets lost their last game to Portland, but you know how much I think of Portland right now. And the Rockets beat the Bucks, so that's impressive. Number 3, the Lakers just played last night, so they could be tired. And number 4, it's not just LeBron James. Alex Caruso is questionable. Anthony Davis, Marcus Morris, KCP, and Dwight Howard are all probable with nagging injuries. Houston can win against a Lakers team that doesn't care tonight in a blowout.
Hey, well, Chap, one thing, I don't think anybody's going to accuse you of cheating. You threw up a tweet earlier today about your record. I was looking at it, and I thought nobody could have that bad
Well, that was in Chappie's Choice. In the major wager, that one is up by a little bit.
Well, here's the recommendation with Chappie's Choice. Just go against it, but you don't parlay. Parlay, there's no way you can win. Those are all parlays, right?
Yes. The Chappie's Choice is all parlays.
Yeah, Chappie's Choice, man. Go take a look at that record.
It's like 65 losses in a row.
Oh, my God. That's the ugliest thing that I've ever seen when it comes to gambling.
Yeah, it's hard
when it comes to gambling. All right, so that gets us to story time, Chap.
Yep, that's right. This is an opportunity for us to share some stories with you about what's going on in our lives. And we start off with the man, the Fith, the legend, Dennis Fithian.
We'll get to some of the feedback from people that have written in before we leave you here on the 5th chapter. Well, for me, the last 3 weeks, I have been doing some radio out in Ann Arbor. And this week, I've been doing it from 10 to noon. The 2 previous weeks, I was doing 3 to 6. But I was looking at the Big Ten, and I thought, hey, how about bringing on like an opponent preview? And I was looking at Penn State out of the Big Ten East, and I thought, you know what? Who do I know that could be a Penn State insider? Oh, how about Brian Chapman? So I texted Chap, asked him to come on the show, and he said, yeah, let's do it. And I didn't put any parameters or anything else. I introduced him as the host of the Fifth Chapter, which I thought was pretty cool. And then he came on, and, we were talking about, Michigan and Penn State. Well, then at one point, Chap started taking like, ooh, that was kind of a cheap shot at Harbaugh. And then he said something about no recruits want to go to Michigan, and how the Wolverines keep getting pounded by the Buckeyes and all this. And at some point, I thought, wow, man, I know the listeners are going to like this guy. And it wasn't a surprise right after the show, Ryan, that you shared a tweet with one of the listeners who said that the B in Brian was for bitter and the C was for condescending.
Yeah,
your name.
I think that was actually a text that you sent to me.
Oh, that was it. But you got that tweet?
No, I didn't see that tweet, as a matter of fact.
Oh, I thought you said. Oh, well, I saw a tweet.
No, I think that was somebody that must have sent this straight to you.
Yeah, well, he said he didn't say the C was for condescending. He just said, "Why don't you check that condescending attitude?" But you know what? I was all right with what you had to say about Michigan. There was one item there that you came on as I introduced you as a Penn State insider. I was thinking that you were going to play it the majority. It was fine to have some opinions, but at one point you kind of revealed that you were a wolf in sheep's clothing when you said something. We are when my team or something. You kind of spilled the beans there about your fandom. Other than that, I thought 99.9% of it was good. And so
did you want to play a cut from it?
Oh, yeah, let's hear it. You got that?
Yeah, we can do that. This is about a 2-minute cut from my appearance yesterday on Dennis's show on WTKA.
It's two things that Michigan, they don't have. They don't have experience much on their O-line coming back. They're breaking in a new quarterback. And then I look to the impact players, and on offense, you can't make a case. I mean, Freiermuth is, you said it, he's the best tight end in the country. And on the defensive side, as of yesterday, I was looking at it and thinking, Micah Parsons is the best linebacker in the country. A lot of that points to, it pointed to Penn State being the biggest challenger to Ohio State. Is that how you see it, even with the loss of Micah Parsons, probable loss of Parsons?
Well, yeah, I think that's fair. This is going to be about the fourth or fifth year in a row that Penn State has been the biggest challenger to Ohio State in the conference. Penn State has played the most competitive games with Ohio State in the conference. I know that Ohio State's biggest rival is Michigan, but you would know it by looking at the football field because Ohio State's busy beating them by 3 and 4 touchdowns. And Penn State, last year, they at least got the game competitive, got it to a 4-point game in the fourth quarter. And the previous 2 seasons, they lost by exactly 1 point in historic Buckeye comebacks. And then the year before that, obviously, Penn State did something that high schoolers in the state of Michigan have never seen the Wolverines do, and that's beat Ohio State. And if they did see it, they were too young to remember it. But I look at the defense that Penn State's going to throw out there, assuming that Micah Parsons is gone. And I'm not overly concerned about the linebackers. That certainly their best linebacker is going to be gone, but they've got some experience in Ellis Brooks and Jesse Okudah, who are going to be in their third years, highly recruited. When they played, they performed fairly well. Brandon Smith played a little bit last year as a true freshman. He was a 5-star. They got Lance Dixon, who's going to be a redshirt freshman. He was another 5-star linebacker, and they got him from the state of Michigan. He turned his back on the state of Michigan, turned his back on Michigan and Michigan State for Penn State, which a lot of recruits are doing, understandably, in the last couple of years.
So just a little taste of my appearance on WTKA yesterday, and I appreciate you for giving me that opportunity.
Yeah, well, I don't think, after listening to that, I don't think the B is for bitter. I think it's for banned. You're banned.
I'm banned from this. Oh no! Oh
The
no!
Michigan fans don't. Once you start mentioning recruiting, that was it. That Knicks any chance for any reappearance, on that show in Ann Arbor, they just won't allow it. I think they already have you blocked. Back there in the studio.
Hey, well, they put that podcast out on their Twitter with me making those comments. So if they did ban me, then it would have happened, had to have happened after that. But maybe they wanted to put that out there to rile up the angry Michigan fan base to start hating Penn State early.
Yeah, well, they do. And I don't know about the Penn State fan base, but one Penn State fan in particular, they are riled up about, and that is you. So, Chap, Murder Max, and Tales from the back seat of Chapman's car as we get to your story time.
Yeah, this is not going to have anything to do with a murder or a prostitute or a stripper. But on Saturday afternoon, I was Ubering and I pulled into this apartment complex in Farmington Hills to pick up a woman. She's probably in her late 50s, and she got in. She apologized. She was saying, "Oh, it's only about a 6 or 7 minute ride to go to the drugstore and back to get my prescription. I wish it was longer, but I have to go." And I was like, "You don't need to apologize." And she said, "I would drive, but I can't anymore because I have a blood disorder." And I've driven people around who can't drive because they have seizures or because they have lost their vision, but I had never driven somebody around because they had a blood disorder. And I was like, "Oh, I've never heard of that." She said it's really bad and she can pass out at any minute. I said, "Well, yeah, I guess we don't want you driving." And she said she's had over 30 surgeries. She's had lots of blood transfusions, as you get that off the screen. And she said that she died. And I said, "Wait, what? You died?" And this is exciting to me because obviously she was in my car alive. And I wanted to know when she died, whether she went to heaven or she went to hell before she came back. But I waited to ask that question. And she was telling me that she was having some issues with losing blood. And when she was on vacation in Colorado, she was having more issues. And the doctor said, "Get back to Michigan as soon as possible." So she got on the next plane and she said she lost all of her blood. Now, that's obviously an exaggeration because if you lose all your blood, you're not coming back. But she was losing blood, and she said she was having a conversation with a woman, and then she just passed out, and she died during the flight. No pulse. She was dead. There were 4 doctors on the plane who were able to revive her, but when she landed, she went straight to the hospital, and she said she was getting a blood transfusion every 15 minutes when they usually don't want to give someone a blood transfusion more than every 3 to 4 hours. So this is a big deal. And so then I said, "So what happened when you died?" And she said, "I saw the light. And I'll tell you what happened when I get out of the store if you want." And I said, "Yes, please," because I wanted to know what happened. So
nice tease.
Yeah, that was a tease. It's perfect for radio.
Oh, yeah.
So she got back in. She picked up right where she left off. And she said, "Yeah, like I was saying, I died on the plane and I saw the light." She said that there was this bright light coming from this silver square, and she was slowly getting closer and closer to the light, and people were saying her name, "Maggie, Maggie." They were saying her name. She said one of the people saying her name was her father, and she said that light, that silver light and that silver square was full of love. That's what she said. And then obviously they brought her back, but I said to her, "So when you saw that light, did you think it was just a weird experience, a weird coincidence, or did you think that you were on your way to heaven?" And she said, "Oh, I definitely believe I was going to heaven, and I am a believer." And I told her that I was too, and I told her that was good to know that she was on the right path. And the big reason I said that is because of a story that my aunt told me several years ago. And she used to work at a hospital, and in the hospital there was this one patient that she had. And she wasn't a doctor, but there was a patient that she would talk to that had died and came back to life. And the patient told my aunt that when he died, he went straight to hell. And he knows that he went straight to hell. There was all sorts of crying and screaming and just intense pain. And he said that he saw some people that he knew that were in there in hell that were crying and screaming. And he said that the worst thing about that was that he knew that it was never going to end. But fortunately for him, he was revived. And he told my aunt that after going to hell and coming back, he wasn't going to do wrong by anybody ever again. And so I told the woman that story, and she thought that was that obviously that was a fascinating story, very interesting, and that was pretty much the end of the ride because we got back to her apartment. But at least it was good to know that she was able to come back to life and that she's on the right path.
Wow.
Yeah.
Heaven and hell in this story time. Just some of the final feedbacks that are coming in here. DJ on Facebook, going back to the Matt Stafford, that was in the second chapter where ESPN said 2 Lions, Stafford and Okudah, had the best chance to make the Hall of Fame. DJ says Stafford's the only good thing to happen to the Lions for decades.
What about Megatron?
Keith says, hey, I'm back. YouTube wasn't working, so I went to Facebook. That's a nice switch there, Keith. Nice job. Who says, that's so sad because I think Swift is the next great running back. We're talking about, I don't know about a Hall of Famer, but second-round pick. I think he's an excellent back, too.
It's hard to put a second-round pick who hasn't played a game into the Hall of Fame conversation. The top 3, top 5 pick, I get that. But a second-round pick, every single team in the NFL passes up on him. That's a stretch. He has to prove it on the field.
Good point. I mean, Bob Quinn was already trying to put Tavai in the Hall of Fame last year after he selected him. Keith says, hey, guys, I feel the same way, which is why sports isn't cheering me up. But you guys cheer me up. Wish you guys were on for several hours. Well, thanks, Keith.
Maybe one day. Maybe one day.
That's right. Maybe one day we get it all running like a fine oiled machine. We will do that. We do appreciate every single one of you for watching, and definitely, man, when you send the feedback in. Coming up on Tuesday's 5th chapter, we will have some more meat on that tiger's bone, and we'll be able to talk about it.
Hopefully.
We'll get to those. Yeah, that's right. Let's cross our fingers and hope they're still playing college football on Tuesday. We'll talk about all that in the 5th chapter.
And make sure you get on that path to see the light.
Yeah, you don't want to go the other way. If it's getting hot.
He represents the mitten by way of Penn State when Chapman gets to talking sports, but people can't wait. He represents the mitten, be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state when that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the 5th chapter. Huh. Brian Chapman. Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spitting the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the 5th chapter. Huh. Huh.